Thank you for coming tonight. We're going to try to keep this on track. But I do want to thank everyone for coming. This meeting is going to be audio and video recorded, as well as we were told it's going to be live streamed on YouTube. So that's supposed to be taking place as well. This is the public meeting, information meeting for the Shimmo, Nantucket Harbor, plus Parcels project that everyone's been involved with for the last, coming up on 2 years now. We're finally coming up to the end of it. I'm going to take and go through the first few slides. I'll do a brief introduction of everybody that's here, and then we'll go into two different phases. The first phase will be kind of a general for everybody in the room, and then the second piece will be specifically for the people that are on grinders. So it'll be a little bit more in depth just on grinders. So there'll be two different phases, and most of the team up here will be talking about it. So just so you guys, everyone knows the key players in the process. My name is David Gray. I'm the sewer director. Over here to my left is Charles Johnson. He's our department engineer. I do have our office manager in the back on the left. Laura Cabati's back there. Most of you have probably spoken with Christine Herman over the last couple of years. She's our administrative clerk. Over here to my right, we have from Weston and Sampson, Steve Peterson was our project manager. Drew Patnode was the resident engineer, which I'm pretty sure everyone in this room has probably met him because he did all the field work for us. In the middle here, we have Frank Ayotte from Hazen and Sawyer. He was the town's owner's project manager, so he kept track of everything going on. Over here to my other left here, we have the grinder pump vendor, Williamson New England Pump, which is Bob Green. And then from Crane Pump Systems, we have Tom Marshall. They'll be here to answer specific questions as we get going. You may end up seeing a picture or two in the presentation of your neighborhood or your yard, just so it doesn't catch you off guard. But we'll get into it. A little bit of project background, as we all know. With a look back, the project areas were defined by a specific project, the CWMP, back in 2014. Project statistics and timeline will come up, with all the different timelines are going to be coming along. As we all know, the construction project, you guys all had meetings with either Drew on site, or phone calls through their office or our office. This is our seventh or eighth public outreach meeting that we've had. We're going to go into homeowner responsibilities, the connection process, the grinder pump logistics, which will be very specific at the second section, and then questions and discussions. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Steve Peterson to move on from here.
All right. Thank you, David. Everybody hear me all right? Is that on? All right. Yeah. I love mics. Awesome. All right. So as David went through kind of the basic agenda, the first thing we're going to do is just a quick look back. I'm going to move pretty quickly through the first 5 or 6 slides. These are slides that have been presented before at public meetings, before the construction started, just to make sure everybody's up to speed on how we got to where we are. So I'm not going to really spend a lot of time on it. You know, the project is based on the comprehensive wastewater management plan that was done, and that developed, that established areas in need of sewer and recommendations for who was going to be connected to the Surfside treatment plant. Next slide, Drew. Oh, I'm looking on. This doesn't advance.
That way you don't have to turn around. You have to advance it yourself.
We'll figure all this out shortly. All right, so, one of the biggest driving factors on the need is the water protection districts and the proximity that properties are to these, and in the Shimmo and Plus areas that we're talking about tonight. They're all in some way impacting within the water protection districts. And again, that's what put them on the radar as needs areas and why we went to town meeting. All right, so next slide, Drew. So basically, defining the project areas, April 2016 was the town meeting vote to proceed to implementation. The base area was the Nantucket Harbor Shimmo area, and then we also included 4 infill areas that are referred to as the plus parcels, Meadowview Drive area, Bayberry Lane, Tashma McLean, and Green Meadows. And for those of you that don't remember where those areas are, if you've forgotten where you live, they're in these areas. And if you don't live in one of these areas, you're probably at the wrong meeting. So, we went through a design process. The biggest thing about the design process to point out is the evaluation of technologies and the best way to provide sewer service to the needs areas. And what we ultimately came up with was a hybrid system, which is a combination of gravity sewers in some areas, and a majority of the areas are sewered by low-pressure sewers, which developed, which is the need for the grinder pumps that we'll be discussing later on. So just real quickly, the Shimmo area itself is defined right here, so all the blue lines indicate where the sewer pipes are, and this is all a low-pressure sewer system, bringing flow back to the pump station on Monomoy Road. There was an existing pump station there, which has been upsized and replaced basically with larger pumps, higher capacity pumps, to handle these additional areas as well as future flows from the areas beyond this area. So also pressure sewers is the Bayberry Drive area. So there's a few streets in this area. This can be seen in blue here. The Tashma, McLean, and Green Meadows areas are actually gravity sewers, based on the elevation of the existing sewers and the topography of these roads. They were able to flow by gravity into the existing sewer system. So these areas are serviced by gravity. And then the last area, the last plus area, is the Meadowview Drive area, and this is a true hybrid area. There's a pump station on Wamasquid Place that takes gravity flow from a majority of the area, but then we have some pressure sewers on Friendship Lane pumping up to Somerset, as well as Marsh Hawk pumping over to Somerset. So that's basically the layout of all the systems. Drew, did you want to go through some of these details? I'll let Drew talk a little bit.
So just a couple statistics on the project. There's approximately 380 properties fronted by the new sewer system, just shy of 14,000 feet of gravity sewer, which flowed to 2 pump stations with 4,400 feet of force mains. About 38,000 feet of low-pressure sewers, primarily in the Shimmo area, but including the Bayberry area, as Steve mentioned, which totals just about 10.7 miles of sewer, in case you're wondering why it took so long to install everything. Quick little timeline. Again, going back to 2017, public bid opening was awarded to Robert Auer. The construction award and notice to proceed was that summer, and we commenced construction on September 18, 2017. Of course, we did our summer shutdown, which is unique to the island, and eventually did release a few of the preliminary areas, Tashma, McLean, Green Meadows, for sewer connection in August of 2018. Recently acknowledged substantial completion for the contractor, which is the point at which the town actually takes ownership of the sewers, and is why you've recently all received letters notifying you of the ability to connect. After that, we recently procured grinder pumps, and as we mentioned, awarded the contract to Williamson Pump and Motor, and currently working on final paving and punch list items as we speak. Little trip down memory lane. As you remember, we started at Vesper and Surfside because we wanted everyone to know we were here. At night, lots of lights, lots of noise. And on the right, you can just see the level of effort at which it takes to install gravity sewers on Hummock Pond Road. Interesting little view on the left. That's 25-foot deep wet well at both of our pump stations, and as you can imagine, groundwater was quite the challenge. And on the right are all the services for just one home in the Shimmo area for the dwellings on that property. contractor used to call that a shovel party because the excavator doesn't do them much good, and it's not as fun as it sounds. As David said, we've done plenty of these public outreach meetings, dating all the way back to March 21st of 2017. We had specific meetings for all the different neighborhoods. Shimmo area, for example, we did in the summer because most of those residents were expected to be here. We've appeared before the select board. We've had countless newspaper ads, weekly updates, and the town sends to an email distribution list, including the trucking list and other contractors. On the bottom is probably the most important part for you folks looking for further information. We have a pretty comprehensive website that has documents, presentations, including this one, both the PowerPoint and the videos, which I should be able to show you pretty quickly. This is the project website. Here at the top, you'll see the project weekly schedule. It's got some important documents on here. I think most importantly would be the frequently asked questions, which was a pretty exhaustive effort to answer all of the questions that you folks have. We also have the policy for sewer stubs and reconnection, which was adopted by the select board, as well as down here, maps for the project areas, and all of our public outreach ads that were in the Inquirer Mirror. And as I mentioned, down on the bottom, we have the presentations and some videos of our previous presentations. Steve, I'll take it.
Excellent. All right, thank you, Drew. So that's kind of just a look back, like I said. We just wanted to move through that quickly. We can certainly answer any questions of that, but hopefully everybody's familiar with all that information. So what we're really here to talk about is how it impacts you as the homeowners, and what do you do from here. The focus of tonight is connecting to the sewer. So I start with this slide here. This actually was a mailing before construction, so this was the first step in the homeowner process where we sent out the building connection questionnaires and the flow chart of how things basically will work, the interactions between the town, the contractor, and the homeowners. So you all had an opportunity to provide input on where you would connect to the sewer when the time came. We had Drew available, and I know he met with a lot of you, hopefully most of you, took us up on our offer to help you figure out where the best place for your connection was. So that brings us to where we are now. It's time to actually connect to the sewer. So just some terminologies, because sometimes we think terms are easy, but just making sure everybody understands what we're referring to. So when we refer to the municipal sewer system and the acceptance of the municipal sewer system, that's obviously what was constructed by RBO, the town's project. And as part of that project, we included what is referred to as sewer service stubs. So determined where your connections would be, left a T in the mainline sewer, and then brought stubs out beyond the edge of the pavement, so that all the work in the road, now that we're paving those roads, all that work is done, and these stubs are extended out. The sewer connection letters went out. You all should have received a letter along with the invitation to this meeting with some other information in it. So the sewer service is what we refer to as the pipe on your property is the actual sewer service. So the pipe on private property is the sewer service. Sewer service type, again, hopefully at this point, most of you know whether you're on a gravity sewer or a pressure sewer. We can certainly, continue to help you understand which it is. But those are the basic differences. So you're going to be going through a sewer connection permit process. That's really the next step, and that starts with selecting sewer service contractor and an engineer to help you design your connection, contractor to install it, and they'll help you with the sewer connection permit, and also the sewer department staff is always available to answer your questions. So just some facts. These have been talked before, and these are in the frequently asked questions. But what is the time frame? Per the actual requirements that are that are written and documented, properties are required to connect within 2 years of the date of the notification letter that you received. So you have 2 years to connect to the sewer. There's some different circumstances for properties in environmentally or nitrogen-sensitive areas. These properties must file an application within 6 months of notification, and they must connect within 1 year of the approved application. In the end, when you do the math, it's not a lot different than the 2 years, but it's just a different criteria system. I will say that I'm pretty sure the entire Shimmo area qualifies under the environmentally sensitive and maybe some of the other areas. Now, the other thing about the environmentally sensitive areas is some of you may have an approved IA system, innovative alternative system that you've installed because the Board of Health either asked or required you to. Those of you that have installed an IA system, you have 10 years from the date that that system was installed to connect to the sewer. And it's basically just an understanding that, you know, you have invested capital in that system, and it buys you a little bit more time. But again, that's from the date that you installed the IA system. As far as enforcement and fines, you know, the written enforcement is, they have the right, through the Board of Health, to assess fines at $200 a day beyond the established time frame. That's what they have the ability to do based on the writing. Okay, so the actual sewer connection permit process, as I've said, you're going to want to hire an approved sewer installer. The sewer department has a list of improved installer, of currently approved installers that was included in the mailings that went out. You know, there've been questions about what if, you know, I have someone that I want to do the work that isn't on the list. Anyone can approach the sewer department to get on the list. You know, David and the sewer department just have certain requirements, certain things they need to have in place before they can approve someone to do these sewer installations, and that's just for everybody's protection. You know, the type of work that's being done, the sewer department just needs to make sure that the contractors that you're hiring to do it are qualified to do it. So you need to provide a plot plan of a proposed sewer connection. I could probably clarify this a little bit. So it says stamped by so the plan needs to be stamped by a licensed engineer. A lot of the plans are done by, you know, the plot plans are done by a surveyor. The actual stamp, though, David, correct me if I'm wrong, needs to be by a licensed engineer for the actual design of the system. And again, it's going to, you know, the design is going to take into account the sewer service type. There are fees related per dwelling or per connection. You've got a connection fee that, you know, on the books, the connection fee is $2,000. That fee is reduced to $500 if you pay it within 2 years, which means if you connect in the time frame that you're supposed to connect within, your fee is $500. There is a privilege fee assessed to everybody. This is in connection with previous capital costs associated with the infrastructure that's in place, improvements, upgrades to the treatment plant, and the, you know, previous system that allowed this system to be built, basically. So this bill is the one that it can be paid up front, but this one can also be apportioned over time, up to 20 years, onto your tax bill. If you choose to apportion it, you have to pay a minimum of 10% down, and then you'll be subject to an interest rate of 4.4%, but you can have it apportioned over time. And then for those homes requiring grinder pumps, there is a purchase fee for the pumps. There's a discounted price offered by the town. We're going to go into a lot more detail on that. And I'll just reiterate what David said earlier. So the information we're going through now is pertinent to everybody. So what we're going to do is get through this whole discussion about the connection to the sewer, and then we're going to open it up to questions and answers about specifically connecting to the sewer. And then we will start basically a second presentation for the people that are on grinder pumps. I want to hear more about the grinder pumps. So that's where we're, how we're handling tonight. So the actual sewer connection installation will need to, before before it's done, the connection itself will need to be, the permit needs to be approved by the sewer department. The town will inspect and approve the final connection. One part of the connection process is once the connection has been approved to the sewer, you or your contractor are required to abandon or demolish the existing septic system per Board of Health regulations. That's really related to the tank itself, either filling or crushing the tank, and that's more of a safety issue than anything. Once the work is done, you need to submit a stamped record as-built drawing just to confirm that basically where the final sewer is. In theory, it should be where the design drawing was, but, we need to know that where everything actually went. The sewer commission, the sewer department needs to have that on record. So once you are connected to the sewer, you do need to be aware that then there are you will be subject to sewer user charges. Now, I was correct, I meant to correct this. I was corrected on this earlier. Is the billing, is it quarterly, David, or I was told it was monthly? So I think it is, all right, so quarterly, you are billed based on water usage. Someone in the meeting earlier today, we met with the vendors, they said actually the bills come out every month, so I was relying on that information. So there is so those of you that don't get a water bill, that are on private wells, there's a fixed fee for dwellings that are on a private well. Okay, so, I think that's the first portion of it, and, a lot of information about connecting to the sewer. And I guess at this time, we would open it up to any questions about that process that weren't made clear. So, David, do we need, you tell me how we go from here. Do people need to come up to the?
In order for it to get picked up on the TV and recording, everyone could go up to the microphone when you ask a question. If not, one of us can try to repeat the question as you say it, but.
We can do that for you, so. All right. Yep.
Two questions. The 6322 is per dwelling fee, so it's, if you have two dwellings, is it 6222 and the 500 per dwelling?
So the question is the privilege fee and connection fee per dwelling, and the answer is yes.
Okay. And then, do you guys have a ballpark between the engineer cost, excavation cost? I know it depends on the distance and the as-built. Like, is that 20,000, 15,000, 2,000, 10,000? Like,
It does have a wide range.
yeah.
And we had were they in the FAQs? I just read some numbers. I thought we quoted it. Can you go to the FAQs? Let me see what we've told people before I get myself in trouble with a number. I think there's something on the FAQs that I would rather just repeat the same number that's been quoted before.
Steve Visco, Board of Health. On the Dukes Road project that we did some tie-ins just for the surveying cost, roughly some of the prices I've seen from proposed to as-built is roughly about $1,500 to do the proposed plan and then the as-built,
Okay.
just so everybody knows. Yeah.
So for the engineering.
For the engineering.
And then the construction,
And here in the
I don't know if
FAQs, it does say,
everybody's clear, but I know those are some of the prices that some of the homeowners have got. Yeah.
well, there's a range for you.
I was going to say, and it's tough because obviously some people are,
We really narrowed that down for you.
it's not just the distance to the road, but also landscaping and other factors that,
That's really the toughest thing for
Really
us, because we've
hard
seen
to
some of the
estimate.
landscaping out there, and that's, that's why the prices could range. So anything that, the question is who pays for ripping up the yards. I mean, any work that's been done as part of the municipal contract, the contractor needs to restore. But now, from here, anything that you do, you're responsible for, you know, the,
If it's on our property, then I'm responsible for any damage done to my property. From
going forward.
To install this
Correct.
gizmo.
Correct, you are. Yep.
Jeff Morash, 35 Meadowview. I want to just address two things. I have an apron. I'll be short. I feel that the apron should be totally removed before you do the road and put back. You guys took out a middle section and you're going to try to patch it in. In my opinion, I don't think that's going to work too well. I think over time it's going to sag, it's not going to look right. I'm basing my decision on 30 years of being in the business and doing many aprons. So I'm hoping that maybe somebody can see clear to install to fix my apron that way. The second thing I want to address is the privilege fees for 2 dwellings, which I'd like to kind of maybe clarify if I'm right in my assessment, and I'm basing my assessment now being a building inspector. I have a house, which I'm considering my primary dwelling, but I do not have a second dwelling, but I do have a second building on my property that is classified as a studio. That studio and the main dwelling both migrate into my existing septic system as it is now. The town has allowed 2 buildings to go into one septic system. The studio is not something that I can rent, I can sell, or subdivide. So I'm hoping you guys would maybe see a little bit of a difference there for the privilege fees of not charging me double, which is going to be a whopping of a bill for connecting up to the sewer. It's also going to be a lot more work to try to run a lot more pipes for a second connection from the studio to the sewer, because I'm going to have to run the whole yard, when right now I've got both of my buildings running into one tank, which is actually fairly close to the road, and it might not be too bad of a bill when I do have to connect up to the sewer. Thank you.
So, quickly, just on the apron, I'd be happy to meet with you and the superintendent from Robert Hour tomorrow morning. I know we spoke about this earlier today, but we could meet on site and chat about the apron. We've replaced plenty all over, so, you know, we'll discuss it tomorrow. But as far as the fees,
You want to take the fee one?
The way that sewer privilege fee is set up now, and that's by date back in April 28th of 2005, the way it's stated is that anyone who makes application for a connection to the sewer system has to pay the sewer connection fee and the sewer privilege fee based on per structure. That in the upcoming regulations may change. It's something that we're working on, but as it stands right now, and the only one that can waive that fee at all is a select board, acting as a sewer commission. So if it comes to questions where, if you have questions on that or whatever, it's nothing that we can't change that regulation. That has to go in front of the board. So that has to be brought up to them.
Hi, Michael Pearson, 24 Hawthorne Lane. If I can just refer to this picture here, it kind of outlines the situation that we have. At the very, very far end of the picture, if you can imagine, we live about 1,500 feet down a dirt track. It's private. At this end, in the foreground, is the Hawthorne Park development. And so the sewer line goes to the bottom of the Hawthorne Park development, but not to where we are. We're in the Hummock Pond watershed area. We've got Title V issues with 2 septic systems. So we've had plans drawn to pull a line 1,500 feet all the way to the sewer. So the question, what happened?
He's going
Go on,
to bring a
boss.
map up and see if he can help you.
No, I don't need a map.
Help us.
I'm-
I know
I'm
you
not-
know what
I'm
you-
not
I know you
familiar
know
with
what you're
Borough
talking about.
Anyway, well, the question is this. We have permission to join onto the town sewer. Somebody kindly put us in the town meeting, so we've got permission. We've got drawings. The question is basically, do we have to run a line at our expense all the way down that dirt track and stub out for everybody else who hasn't got permission? And then secondly, when other people join on to the system we've kindly put in, so they're sitting back kind of rubbing their hands as we dig and put a line in, can they just join on at a later stage and say thanks a lot and it's been a pleasure?
David, you want me to take that one, or you want? Huh?
I'm just trying to write out the questions.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I mean, so I guess the basic answer is that everything you said is probably true. I mean, you're the one that, if you're going to extend the sewer, I do believe that the town requires you to leave stubs for anybody that you front
It
along
does,
the
yeah.
way. If you can't work out an agreement with anybody ahead of time to connect. Now, I guess the real question would be when it becomes, as long as it's private, and David, I would need help with this one, if people want, at what point is it a town sewer versus a private sewer? And if somebody that's been left a stub wants to connect, until the town takes it over, what would happen if somebody wants to connect? Wouldn't they have to go through the owner of the sewer?
Yeah, Steve can help answer that as well from the.
Thank you very much.
In 2002, the select board, acting as the sewer commissioners, put the policy in place that once a sewer is put in the private way or a public way, it's deemed for the public use. Gets turned over to the town. This was all to avoid individual ownerships of sewers and then people that own the sewers holding everybody else hostage to tying in. And that policy's been in for a long time.
Thank you.
Hi, Joe Grouse, Pinkham Circle. Question on the as-built, are there really two as-built? You have to have an as-built drawn for the proposed system and then a final as-built as it actually is constructed. Right? So
Correct.
there's really two, sort of one to start the process and a second one when it's completed. And you can't apply for the permit until you have the first, correct?
You won't get the, you apply, right.
You have to hire an engineer first, have the plan drawn up, and then you can come apply for the sewer permit.
It's part of the permit process, correct, as in you're applying for it. And then in terms of, the first drawing, the design or approved plot plan versus the as-built, in theory, it should be the same plan and someone just certifying that it was put in as shown, so it should just be another stamp. But, if things move during the construction, if a line has to go somewhere other than what was shown on the original plan, that's what's needed there.
But again, the first step for any homeowner really is to find a civil engineer
Yeah.
or one of the surveyors on the island that does this work and have the plan drawn up, and then you can go and apply for the permit.
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
It says surveyor or engineer for that. Does it either or they the same, or how does that?
So yeah, we tried to clarify that earlier, so the wording is a little confusing. So the plan needs to be stamped by an engineer. A lot of the plans get done by surveyors who have an engineer on staff to do the stamp or use have another engineer stamp the plan for them. So surveyors do the work, but ultimately the plan is stamped by an engineer. Yes.
Hi, my name is Inez Hutton. I live at 49 Public Road. I have my home, and I also have an apartment, and I have a commercial kitchen. The septic system is hooked up as a commercial septic system for the apartment and the kitchen, and I had a brand-new septic system put in 7 years ago for my house. And I live approximately 800 feet off of Public Road. So, my question is, what is going to be my hookup fee if the pipe has to come all the way down my driveway, and do I have to pay for separate for the commercial kitchen and the apartment and my home?
Okay, so so in addition to the private home,
Yes,
you,
I've got an apartment and a commercial kitchen. The commercial kitchen has a commercial septic system. The apartment hooks into that, and I've had this since 1996.
okay. So, I mean, all of these are going to be dealt with on a case-by-case basis with a better understanding of what's going on. But my understanding, David, would that be 2 or 3? It's at
Yeah.
least 2.
It's at least 2, yeah. If they go, the permits all go by structure, the way it's laid out now. Regardless if you have a commercial or private on the lot, it's based on what structure. If your apartment's in an attached garage, that doesn't count as a separate structure. So it sounds like you have 2 buildings,
Yes, it's 2 buildings. It's
Yeah.
the apartment's attached to the so-called quote,
Yeah.
attached to the kitchen, but it's obviously separate.
All right, so yeah, it sounds like you have 2 structures, so there's 2 separate permit fees, and so you'll end up being issued 2 separate permits for that project.
Even 900 feet off of Fulton's Road.
Yeah, I'm trying to picture your location, and
It's right across the street from Sozex Farm, next to the Girl Scouts.
down in the back, it was way off the road there, yeah. That lateral that you will run in, which is called the lateral, will go in and then will tie into where your engineer designs it, however they do design it. And it can end up being 1 system, 2 pump systems, it's all depend on what the engineer.
Well, why do I have to even do it?
Because the reason that everyone has to do it is because they were put in to these so-called needs areas in 2004 in the Comprehensive Wastewater Management Plan. This was done long before my time, and it was done based on water quality issues, and you're a little bit far, you're at the outside edge of that needs area.
Be a mile and a half from Pulpus Harbor,
Oh, yeah.
walking up with all the sand and clay and everything else. Between my house and Pulpus, where I live on the south side of Pulpus Road, how can it possibly be polluting Pulpus Harbor?
If you look at the attached map here, you're actually in the Nantucket Harbor Watershed Protection District and the Wellhead Protection District for the Wannacomet Water municipal drinking water wells.
Well, my well is 250 feet deep. I seem to have no problem with the drinking water.
So I mean, I think the answer to the question at this point is you are in the district, you're in the needs area, and that's why the sewer was extended out there. Okay? Yep.
Hi, Sandy Mitchell, I live on Fulton Road next to INS. Did I understand you correctly that everyone in the Shimmo area is in the environmentally sensitive district, and so we have to apply within 6 months, is that correct?
Yeah, yes, that is correct.
That specific needs area shows it.
Back again. This one, Dave?
The blue is B, and the checkered light blue is, blue is A, which is 600 feet, basically, and the checkered blue is Zone B, which stretches all the way up through part of North Patcher, all the way over Pulpus Road into Walwyn. The checkered, the light
Yep.
color blue.
Thomas Holt, 10 Bayberry Lane. It's kind of a question on theory. Why do I have to crush my existing system? Is there any way that I can tie in and use it as an emergency system if the town sewer backs up? Because I personally have cleaned up plenty of feces in friends' basements when the town sewer ends up failing. So is there any kind of, once I spend all this money, is there any way that I can use my existing system as a fail-safe?
So at this point, the town is not approving the use of septic tanks for any use with the sewer. Huh?
Even those leaching fields? Like,
You don't have to do anything with them, they're abandoned in place.
okay.
Yeah.
Is there any way that I could tie in, again, for an emergency?
At this time, no. The way that the systems work, we cannot, and the crushing and the decommissioning of the septic systems are all based on Board of Health regulations. There are a couple of gentlemen here that could maybe clarify a little bit more, but one of the biggest reasons that they want you to take and fill your septic tank specifically is over time, the concrete can degrade, and there's a collapse potential. And some of the older systems don't use the traditional trenches that they are now. They had the old honeycomb leaching pits, and I don't know if either Steve or Roberto would want to spend a little bit more time on that part of it, but that's all falls in under the Board of Health regulations, and there's a proper and a very specific protocol on how to decommission these and fill them with sand or remove them.
So on that, the decommissioning of these systems is a cost to us, or is that part of the whole process?
That will be a cost
That's added on?
passed on to you by your contractor. The contractor that does your connection will do the abandonment.
Okay, so it's an additional cost.
And
Yes.
just to touch upon the backing up issue, on Bayberry Lane, it's a pressure sewer. At the end of every stub, we put a stainless steel, it's a ball valve curb stop, as well as a check valve. It's an all-in-one stainless steel unit. There's also a check valve on the grinder pump when you install it. I don't believe there's any reason why you can't install as many as you'd like, but they do fail, so.
Yeah, it's just, it's a whole lot easier to have it leach into an existing field or something than me shoveling crap out of my basement. You know? I have it, it's existing, it's usable, and I'm gonna try to use it the best I can. And right now, you guys are telling me not to get rid of it. And I know it's based off health codes and whatever, but I feel like it might be something that's been overlooked in some way, especially the fact that we're all gonna have to eat that cost.
Yep. Well, that's fine, yeah. Well, I think we answered it.
Yeah, but it's okay.
Yep.
Hi, Carter Mitchell, 51 Faultless Road. Have you guys done any kind of studies as far as the potential exposure of the sewer beds to some sort of monumental tidal surge? And in the event of a monumental tidal surge, what happens to all of the stuff that we have to get rid of?
The way that the facility was built and subsequently upgraded recently was based, all the flow numbers for the facility and what capacity it can take was based on this 2004 and then subsequent 2014 study. There are requirements in our permit to watch erosion levels along the shoreline. There's certain set points. If it gets too close, we have to abandon certain beds that we call them discharge beds. We currently have 15 of those beds out there. 3 of them are closer to the shoreline than anything else. Those are the oldest beds that we have, and they are used very limitedly just because of they're old and perk rates. But we do have a set point in line when it comes up to us, and we've seen a lot more accretion in front of the beds than erosion. This year was a bit of a different, but we've already gained back about another 4 feet already recently over the last few months. But we do measure it on a very consistent basis. We have to. It's in our permit.
What is the average, number of feet the sewer beds are above sea level?
Most of our beds our beds are definitely, they're all laid in GPSed, and we kind of sit below the bluff that's there, the coastal dune. I couldn't give you the exact off the top of my head, but the beds are fairly close to groundwater level. You can tell by the percolation factors and what. So, but we have to monitor them. We have to clean them, maintain them, and it's all within our permits. So we watch that coastal movement all the time. We have to. Sconset facility has the same kind of requirements.
So if, let's say we did have a monumental tidal surge, and it took out, so from what I'm looking at right now, let's say it took out 9 of those beds, what does that do to the capacity of the sewer plant handling all these new developments?
The limiting factor on our discharge permit, we're permitted to discharge 4 million gallons a day. That's based on each individual bed. So out of the 15 beds that are there, each one of those beds can handle the estimated 4 million gallons a day. We're currently at a little over 2 million gallons a day. So if we were to lose 3, 4, or 5 beds in a monumental storm, the other beds can handle that until, like I said, they can do 4 million gallons a day. That's our limiting factor. The plant's designed to handle 7.7 million a day, but we can only discharge 4 million gallons a day because of the beds. So the beds are the limiting factor. And we only use one bed at a time.
Dave, Steve Visco, could you explain to him what comes out of that plant and what we could actually do? We could have an open water discharge permit if we really needed to.
We could, and then I don't know if anyone's ever been out to the plant, but if we were to hold a bottle of water up next to what our effluent is, you can't tell the difference. We are a microfiltration facility, which means we have ultrafiltration. We have 2-micron filters before our discharge, and it looks just like plain, clear drinking water. And we discharge back into the ground. So we're a groundwater discharge facility. Ultimately, it goes through the sand bed filters, percolates down, and either ends up in the drift to the ocean or back into the ultimate groundwater. So we have, our discharge is pretty remarkable for a wastewater facility.
John Rizzo from 5 Pond Road. I have a question about the hourly contractors who were chosen.
So the general, question about the general contractor that did the work in the street? Or the contractors on the list?
Was there a criteria used in order to get on this list?
Yeah, I mean, I can speak for Dave. I know the starting point was that there is an approved list that the DPW maintains, and David started with that list of the contractors on that do sewer work. But the process to get on the list is, there's certain criteria that needs to be met and paperwork that needs to be filed, David, if someone else wants to get on that list.
Any contractor or anyone that has experience installing sewers can get on the list, provided they provide multiple documents from, hoisters licenses, OSHA 10 cards. A lot of the times contractors that come here to do work have references from the mainland. Many of the references that for the local contractors that are here, the list was created before I started at the plant. It's been slightly modified over the years. There's been, at one point in time, a lot of just general landscapers had been added to the plan that could cut the roads and stuff like that. It's been shrunken down to some point because either contractors have fallen away from that type of work, aren't generally performing sewer work, or they went out and paid the $100 fee and they were thrown on the list. Sewers are a little more complicated than just digging a hole and putting a pipe in the ground. And our vetting of the contractors it's to protect the town in one piece, but it's to protect the homeowner. If someone installs your sewer line incorrectly, pitched wrong, doesn't use the right kind of pipe, you're going to be in jeopardy if something fails. So we're looking out for the homeowner as well as the town. And if people come out, we had a guy recently, just as early as last week, had fallen off the list because he had stopped doing sewer work for a while, came back out, provided all the documents, and he's back on the list now. So you can get on the list, depending you have that kind of experience. And we try to vet the contractors pretty deeply. Again, it's, not anyone can just throw sewer pipe in the ground. And, I'm also a master plumber, so there's a lot to piping than just, having a pipe in the ground, so.
Yes.
Just to go to this wrong pitch, wrong pipe, isn't the process that
you as the sewer god is supposed to inspect the pipe to make sure it's the right pipe?
We we have a field crew that goes out every day and does field inspections. And if the guys see something wrong, the project is stopped, or if the project has been covered over before we get there for an inspection, the town reserves the right to have all the work uncovered and/or removed if it's done improperly.
And this field crew, what qualifications do they have to know that it's done properly?
Many of the field crew guys that are out there are Massachusetts grade 6 wastewater operators, so they have a very broad knowledge of everything from what goes in, goes out, how to pipe it, how to fix it. So we have a very talented and experienced crew as far as.
And you say some of them are, not all of them?
Well, we have grade 6 operators, we have grade 4 operators, we have grade 2 up, but everyone who holds a wastewater certification has gone through extensive training.
Are they all engineers?
They're not engineers, no. As the same thing, plumbers are not engineers as well. I mean, but they're licensed to take and perform work.
Yes.
Are all the people on this list here year-round, that they'll be able to fix if there's a problem with our system?
Most everyone that's on that list is a year-round resident, or they have staff on the island at all given times. There was one company on there, and I can't remember if it's even on. They had crews coming over every morning. They weren't on the island all night long. And it's people like that we try to vet, that, if something happens to someone's line, they want service. They don't want to wait a day or two because the boat's not running. So we try to vet this list very carefully.
What is the chance that this sewer could back up, at the plant or on the road or down the street and then come into our houses?
Kind of a trick question. I'll say it's never going to happen, but as we recently saw with the force main, it does happen. Although I'm very proud of the fact that force main break, we didn't have one house experience a backup because of the quick thinking of licensed wastewater operators. There's always a chance for something to go wrong. Someone hits a telephone pole and an accident, power goes out. Most of our stations have generators. Those that don't, we have towable generators. So we always have an ability to have backup power. We're required to have spare parts on hand. We have a very experienced on-call staff that can pretty much replace anything from a fuse to a pump within an hour. So highly unlikely. I can't say it's never going to happen, but depending on what gets put down the lines, the sewer mains, disposable wipes and grease are our enemy, and we pay dearly for that kind of stuff that's flush. So
How will we know if it's a problem at our house with our little box or it's further out?
I am going to actually let one of the crane people tell you kind of what that box will do. If we can go into there, if one of you guys want to.
When you say the box, I want to understand what you're saying.
The grinder thing is gonna, I guess.
Okay.
Well, there's a little box out there, I'm not sure what that one is,
Yeah.
but then there's a bigger box that goes in the ground.
Yeah,
It's
well,
on the house, then they have a big one that goes in the ground.
yeah. In the ground, we tend to call that a basin, grinder basin. The control panel up in the back is almost identical to what you're going to have. There's some circuit breakers in there. There's obviously a warning light, and there's a buzzer and a push to silence button. So if everything's working fine, that just sits on the side of the house. Now down in the basin, you have your grinder pump and some level indicator. So as the sewage comes in and fills up the basin, all of a sudden the basin says, okay, I've got to get this out of here. So the pump turns on, grinds everything, and moves it along. One of the differences between a septic system and a grinder pump system is the way they're designed to work. A septic system is in your yard, is designed to work. The big tank settles out the solids, the clean water comes to the top, that comes to the other end of the tank, goes out into the leaching field, so you have some kind of basic treatment before that relatively clean water goes out from the top of the tank. A grinder pump system is designed to convey that along. That we don't want it sitting around, we don't want it staying around. It comes in, it goes out. They're designed to start, run, grind, and move it along. So David and his crew and his plant can take care of it. So the difference between the two systems is, and I understand, people are used to seeing their septic system. This is not designed to treat anything or deal with any of the biological process, we want that happening at the plant. So the sewage that comes out of the house and goes into the grinder basin comes down the bottom. Like I said, the level comes up, pump turns on, gets it out of there. We're ready for some more. So it's designed not to hang around, and that's why we have some of the smaller pipes around. We don't have these big, huge gravity pipes because they're designed to flow full, to get to where they're going, and to keep a lot of that stuff entrained in the flow to get to David's bigger pump stations or David's plant.
Can you describe to her what triggers those quickly, just?
Oh,
So,
yeah.
we've moved into the second meeting
Yeah.
before we've given the presentation, I think. I'm just, so
I
I
can
think,
answer your question, Ellen, right after.
I think maybe we should take a couple more questions now on this, and then we're going to shift and start talking about the grinder pumps. We can certainly answer more. There'll be more questions and answers after. So a couple more questions. You had your hand up. Yep.
Bob Paul, 65 Fulvis. At one time, we were told that the entire septic system had to be demolished, and I got the impression that you can just simply fill the tank with sand or something, and you can leave the leach fields in place.
That is correct. Right?
Yeah, I
Did I
don't
miss
know
it?
if Steve wants to clarify. It's,
You don't
it-
need to do anything with the leach trenches, because if you have stone pipe, there's no cavity that's left.
it gives you the option. Some people will puncture the bottom of the, after it's pumped out, they'll puncture the tank, fill it with sand so that it won't collapse in the field. Other people may want to remove that tank because they might want to put in a garage or another cottage. So it's going to be up to each lot and per patron on what they do with their tank and their associated trenches and everything.
I'm Brian DiBiase, up 39 Millview Drive. Can the leaching field be used to, let's say, take out, runoff from our gutters and leaders? Are we allowed to tie into that, or does it have to be completely abandoned?
I'm kind of seeing that it looks like maybe that can be done, but I'll let the,
Steve Disco, if you have an existing leach pit, which I know, take care, you absolutely, if you wanted to take your gutters off your garage and then transform that into a catch basin for runoff, I don't think there's any regulation about that. So, I mean, if you do have a leach pit, we'd like to see that also, and if you're not going to utilize it that way, also opened and abandoned. Similar to what Dave said with the tank, it's a confined space that's in the ground. There's potential, who knows, a cover falls, somebody falls in it, and it's a liability on your property. So that's one of the reasons why we have you abandon it. But I've seen that done before with other people that aren't utilizing the septic leach, especially a pit, for drainage.
All right. One more question. Yep.
Do you know the cost of how much the electricity will cost to run this thing for each
The pump? Okay, there's a lot. That's in the presentation. What was it for?
I believe it's,
I haven't done it yet.
I believe it's in the range of $30 to $40 a year.
$30 to $40 a year. All right. All right. This is the last question, and then we're going to move on to the other phase.
If you have a well, a fixed water fee, if you have a well,
Yep.
how much will that be?
That's in the Q&A. I took it off the slide.
Is that on the tax bill? Will it get on the tax bill, or is it?
It's on your the water bill, right?
And water or sewer bill, yeah. And I
So
believe
the
it's
water
covered in
bill
the
becomes a
frequently asked
water and sewer
questions.
bill.
Okay, but if you have a well, and you said it's a fixed, so is it a one-time-a-year payment, or how much?
That's quarterly, and I thought it averaged out to about $1,200 a year.
I can't quote it. I don't honestly know. I wouldn't want to. It's approximately 1,200 years. I believe.
I think-
Is that gonna be for the charge for that, is that gonna be for the hydrants that are gonna go up the Pulpus Road?
Say it again?
Is that gonna be for the fire hydrants that are gonna go up on Pulpus Road?
No, no, any of the fees are related to the sewer. They're for the sewer system. $220, I knew it was written somewhere. So the letter we sent out says $225 per quarter. Okay. So if you're on a well, it's the quarterly billing is $225. Okay, all right. I knew I saw it somewhere.
Bedrooms you have, though? No, if it's 3 or 4 bedrooms, it's $377.
That's right.
225 until he has 3 bedrooms, and that's $377.
Okay.
According to your letter.
Yep. Okay, one more.
If you're planning on putting in if I'm planning on putting on a deduct meter to separate the watering water from the household water so that I'm not charged as much volume, does that have to be done at the same time with all of this, or can that be done sometime later? Does it matter?
The deduct meters can be installed at any time on the, and the water company, I believe, has those meters. And that'll be tied into your line coming into the house. It can be done sooner or later. It's either way. Yeah.
So we're going to take just a couple of minutes and switch up the presentation. If you want to stick around and learn about the grinder pumps, I'm sure most of you do, but if anybody's not interested in that part of the presentation, we'll give you 2 minutes to make good your escape. And then we'll get right into the other presentation.
And then before everybody leaves,
Yeah.
I'd just like to let everybody know, through the Board of Health, we have a loan program which can be utilized for sewer work, which is 2% over 20 years. The only thing that it won't pay for is the fees associated with the sewer, like the privilege fee and the permit fee. And we have the application online on our website or down at Chestnut Street.
I wish I had said that. Steve, I forgot about the loan.
Yeah, there's a whole stack of them up back. There's a typical homeowner guide. Okay. Sure.
That's why I didn't know someone what the
Yeah, this is a great thing to utilize.
use that, and that's.
The road's gonna be done. Hurry up, people are calling and showing up.
I know.
So some people, the front of my garage. What's the number again?
You're gonna be overwhelmed.
If anybody else asks about like the company, they start the sewer, and then we're gonna give them everything.
That's why I was trying to avoid this number.
Board of Health, the company, we're gonna put like a
So she's got a sliver of
start
frontage
with us,
on.
and our
set.
staff are gonna put them in the
But I-
grinder pump.
I'm pretty sure it's-
They start with us, because if they're thinking, I gotta go to Board of Health now, they start with us, and then put it on the garage. Everything is in the packet. Yeah, it was perfect, yeah. But if anybody else
All right, we're going to get started in 1 minute.
you go to us, that's it.
45 seconds.
This thing here, am I would sell me my?
You were just in
A or B, name of protection
Pardon me?
zone.
you were actually in
So I mean, when I started to look at this, how I filled it out.
give us a call. Call me tomorrow.
Yeah, I'll talk to you about it.
Drew will know. He's,
Yeah, because I have to go to the health department.
I'm pretty sure you're in a well protection. I don't think you're in a zone area.
Because Drew would know probably too.
Yeah. UPAs, you know. Yeah, oh, about, yeah.
You're leaving tomorrow? I tried to alleviate Steve. Steve was great. Steve was great jumping in.
Yeah. Thank you.
No.
David's right? No.
We're going to get started. Sure. All right, you want to get the... All right. Thanks for coming out. Thanks for sticking around. So obviously, the next piece is to talk about, the homes that need a grinder pump and some of the different circumstances surrounding that. All the same information applies, but, this is the additional information regarding that. So go ahead, Drew. So basically, we'll talk about a few things. Town procurement process. So the town did go through a process of procuring a grinder pump manufacturer to standardize the pumps in this system. The town is offering a discounted pricing. We'll give you some of the details on that. We'll go a little bit into the grinder pump specifications, the installation process, and the operation and maintenance of the units. And as David had said, and you've already started to meet, we have representatives from the manufacturer's rep and the grinder pump manufacturer. All right, so in terms of the procurement process, one thing at the beginning of this process that the town voted to do was to subsidize the cost of the grinder pumps by paying a portion of the cost for homeowners on this project that are going to need a grinder pump. So to that end, we went through a public bidding process just like we did for the main sewer installation contract, where we specified we put out a performance spec on the type of pumps that we were looking for, and more importantly, the type of service that we were looking for, because one of the biggest concerns of the town was making sure that whoever they selected, whoever won the bids for the grinder pumps was not only qualified and that they had the, a adequate product for what we needed to do, but they could also stand by it and provide support to the island. So we went through the process, opened bids in March, and the contract was awarded on April 1st to Williamson, New England Pump and Motor. So Bob Green is here from Williamson. And then the pump model is the Barnes Ecotrans system. And Tom Marshall is here from Barnes. So the discounted pricing, basically what the town is offering to homeowners that choose to take advantage of the offer, is a price of $1,500 per unit. So the town will buy the units, and then the homeowners will pay $1,500 for the unit. Another caveat on that, we're back to the IA system homes, so dwellings that have a Board of Health approved IA system will only pay $500 for the unit. This discounted pricing only applies to the project areas that we're here talking about tonight, the Nantucket Harbor, Shimmo, and Plus areas, and it's for dwellings that were developed prior to December 31st, 2017. It doesn't apply to new dwellings that are going to be built or that have been built since the project started. It's good for up to 2 units. We've talked before about, the multiple connection requirements and times. So if there's a case where 2 units are required on a property because you have multiple uses, the policy will apply for both units, basically per connection and privilege fee that's paid. As part of the sewer connection permit process, there will be some documentation for acceptance of the pump at the discounted price and payment will be made with the sewer connection permit. Another important thing is that the discount applies to the specified units only. So, the town, and we'll go into some more of the details on it, the town will entertain modifications, and they'll, potentially approve other units for different reasons, but anything other than the units that were procured by the town will not apply, the discount will not apply. And then the homeowners are responsible for the installation, the operation, and the maintenance of the pumps. So the pumps that are being provided are, very much, industry standard residential simplex centrifugal grinder pump units. It's a completely factory-built and tested assembly. It comes, all assembled in the basin with the pump in the basin. They have certain, whether these acronyms mean anything to you or not, they're UL listed, NSF and CSA approved, so some of the industry standards, and they have to apply for and prove that they meet the criteria of those agencies. The primary components are basically you have a basin and a cover. You have the grinder pump itself with a 2-horsepower motor, and then you have an alarm panel with a generator connection. The alarm panels that were specified have the ability to plug in a portable generator in the event of a power outage. I think at the back of the room, there's a control panel that you can take a look at. That's mounted on the side of the house. And then the covers are that rock that you saw on the floor back there is what the covers look like. And we'll have some pictures as we go. So the tank volumes, we've talked a lot about the difference between a septic tank and a sewer system. So the most important thing is wastewater comes in and it goes out. It doesn't sit. It doesn't stay in the tanks. The idea is to move it away quickly. So the way these pumps work is each pump cycle is about 20 gallons. Basically, from when the pump turns on, the level rises to a point. When that pump turns on, it pumps 20 gallons before it hits the pump off level, and then it leaves about 10 gallons in the tank below the pump. The tanks are designed to funnel all the wastewater underneath the pump and into the pump unit, keeps all the solids moving to the pump, and again, not allowing a lot of wastewater to remain in the tank between pump cycles. It's keep everything moving. Now there is, so above the pump on level, or basically from the bottom of the tank to the inlet there's actually 65 gallons of storage. So there's another 45 gallons of storage above the pump on level. So there is, as the pump is operating down here, there is a little bit of capacity built into the tank to handle flows, when the pumps are not, basically in a power outage. There are additional storage options available. I know that's a major question that comes up at all of these hearings, is what do I do in a power outage? We can certainly have that discussion. I will tell you that, based on all industry studies, the size of this tank is the standard for your typical residential home. I also understand that some of the homes in these areas aren't your typical residential home. There are some significant properties out there. So there are some other options for storage. But if I go to the next slide. So, as I said before, the town has specified a certain pump. That's the pump that's approved for these systems. That's the pump that is eligible for the discount. As homeowners, work with their engineers and contractors. If they determine they need something other than that unit, one of the other options that Barnes offers that still provides, the proper funneling of the wastewater and appropriate cycle times are duplex and triplex units. Again, I'll say it over and over again, but, going in this direction is certainly an option for people. You're on your own for the cost if you're going to go with a pump above and beyond what the town has procured. But it does provide you these larger duplex pumps. It's a larger tank, so it would provide increased operating and storage volumes. It provides redundancy because it has more than one pump. Not eligible for the discounted pricing. But I will say that, you know, there have been questions about the reuse of septic tanks, and that is not approved by the town. It might sound like a nice idea to be able to reuse that and have that volume, but it's just contrary to the intent of what the sewer system is supposed to do. You know, you're going to have wastewater going septic, you're going to have odors, and then you're also the integrity of the tanks themselves. You know, you're going to be taking on groundwater into the system itself. But really the bigger issue is you're not moving the wastewater. Solids are settling out. You still have a tank that's settling out solids on your property. You're still going to need to get that pumped out, and we're going to be dealing with odor issues. So people ask about the power. You know, so these are the basic power requirements that you need at the house. You need a 240 volt, 30 amp single phase for the pump. It's got to be connected to a dedicated 240 volt, 30 amp double pole circuit breaker inside the home. You might be able to tell I'm not an electrical guy. I'm just kind of reading this. And the other thing here is, and the pump guys could probably explain this better, but they also want a separate circuit for the alarms, 120 volt, 15 amp single phase, and that's an alarm circuit connected to a separate circuit breaker. And actually, Bob, why don't you just touch on that?
Basically, that's a level of protection for you and knowledge about the system. The pump runs on the larger circuit breaker. It is a mechanical device. Something were to happen, something were to get jammed in there, all of a sudden that trips that breaker. We don't want the alarm circuit on that same circuit breaker because now there's no power anywhere. So we have a circuit breaker for the pump, and then we have a circuit breaker for the alarm system. So if something were to, like I said, jam or that pump and that circuit breaker pops, we still have power to run the alarm and let you know that there is a problem. So if it's not wired that way, you won't get that warning or that protection. So that's the way that we would like to have that done.
And the typical electrical cost is about $30 to $40 a year. Sure, we'll take a question on that, yeah.
On the alarm circuit, on a situation of power failure, is there any kind of battery backup that's going to let the alarm go off if this pump is filled or overfilled?
There's no backup per se if the power goes out to alarm you, no. But again, one of the things that happens during a power outage is typically the water usage drops off. I mean, we can talk to you about the studies and stuff, and I completely understand your question. But that's why if the pump were to be off and then you're still using the water, we have that additional storage, and then the power is restored. You may get a high alarm warning because, again, in normal operation, if something were to happen, you'll get an alarm for that. Hey, the level's too high. Somebody needs to pay attention to this. But if the power's out and that level does creep up, then when the power is restored, obviously that system's still going to be in place and then be powered up. And then as that level goes down, that will all go off.
Homer, just to touch a little bit on that, because I know your background and what you do. Their control panels, I believe, have 2 dry contacts, or is it just it's one of them that one dry contact that can actually be wired into a remote alarm or something else like that. So, as your systems kind of do have that contact, these systems have a contact provided for some type of a remote monitoring or alarm.
Home alarm system, something like that. It can be integrated into that.
All right, so, and then it's the last thing on here, we had talked about this earlier. So the typical electrical cost to run these pumps is about $30 to $40 a year. So the installation process, there's a contractor certification process. We alluded to that earlier, that, in addition to contractors being on the list to install sewers, the Williamson and Barnes team is going to provide contractor certification for the installation of their units. It's basically for everyone's protection. It's for theirs, because they're going to warranty these products, and they're going to want to know that they've been properly installed. And it's for the homeowner's protection, too, to make sure that, the people that you're hiring understand the units and the installation of the units. So that's something that that we're setting up right now, is the training sessions for contractors. And we actually had a meeting this afternoon with both engineers and contractors about a lot of things that we're talking about tonight, and more things specific to their interests. So there's a list of sewer installers, and he's saying, so the intent is that, all of them are going to be invited and to come to the training. We're assuming they will all come to the training so that they can do the pumps. They need to come to the training, and then they will get the double certification so that they can also install the pumps. But there will be several training sessions provided to meet everybody's schedule, and give them several opportunities. Yeah.
I believe you've already had a few training courses on the island.
Yes.
So I think you already have a couple of, I don't know the names off the top of my head, but.
Yeah, we do have some that have some initial training. We're working within, after our meeting today, we're nailing down a couple dates we're going to have our next training session scheduled within the next week. And part of that is working with the contractors, what time do they have available. But we're moving as fast as we can to get this done so we can get things started.
But currently, there's no list of people that are certified to install this?
Under this contract, I'm gonna say no, but have we had training on the island? Yes.
So, but the answer is no.
Yes.
Thank you.
Real quick question.
Yep.
Sure.
You guys you're warranting the work. What is the longevity? Have you guys done testing on the actual pumps themselves? So you guys have a warranty on it, but am I expecting a 20 or 30-year life expectancy on this?
Well, I can say that it is a mechanical device. There are some things that could happen. I know that I've been over on the island here for about the past 5 years. We have over 60 units that have been installed and have been running. We've had one incident with a level sensor that I personally changed myself in 45 minutes. So as far as on the island, we've had a number of units. As far as Barnes and their systems across the country, they've started this in 1970?
Late 70s.
Late 70s. So as far as longevity, I was at a site in Cromwell, Connecticut that was installed in 1992 the other day, and we were only there because the house next door got struck by lightning, and while we were there, we just wanted to kind of pop over and check it. So I wish they all worked, that long. There was just a retired couple that lived there. Like anything, how well you treat it is going to be reflected in the performance.
So
The guarantee under this is
the
2 years.
So we have a
warranty.
2-year warranty from the date of installation. And I guess I understand that the time frame is going to vary in terms of how long they last, but you do have some records that indicate a typical pump is in it 15 to 20 years. Am I
That's
saying that
correct.
right?
Yeah,
So
that's
about
correct.
15 to 20 years is what their research has told them in terms of the core unit of the pump, which would mean, so the basin, you would basically, if the pump fails in that 15 to 20-year time frame, you would pull the pump out and put a new pump in. So you'd need to replace the pump at that point.
So just
Yeah.
another minor question.
Sure.
As far as the mounting of the alarm on the house, does it actually have to be on the house, or can you put it closer toward the pump and create a bed around it type of situation, as well as run power all the way through?
I'll take this. Yeah, the alarm panel needs, first of all, needs to be installed in direct line of sight of the basin. But it can be installed on another structure. You can put it on a 4x4 post. You can put it on the side of the house. But just remember, you have to bring power to it as well. So you would have to bring in the power from your home underground or something. Typically, people will put them on the side of a garage or on the house.
Question?
The relationship between, what is Williams and what is Barnes? Who does what?
Well, Barnes is the manufacturer. They make the pumps, they make the basins, they sell them all around the world. And just because they can't be everywhere, every house, every city, every town, every meeting, they have what's called representatives. So in New England, Williamson Pump and Motor is Barnes' representative. We have a motor shop, we have a machine shop, we're a factory-trained service. Our guys have been out there to the factory, trained with their guys, so we have people that know the product inside and out, and we service the New England area with the Barnes product line.
That's okay, Jackie. I wanted to use the mic to make sure everyone could hear this. My understanding is you get 15 years on a pump if nothing goes into your system that's going to trash it. So I grew up out west. 3 years is what these guys are good for. So if you don't put feminine products or flushable wipes, which aren't actually flushable, or children's small toys into the system, that's not going to trash your pump. If the only thing that goes in is poop and toilet paper, these things are good forever. If my pump goes down, is there somebody on island here who's going to fix it?
So we went into the question and answer pretty early, so I...
No, it's important.
And it's on the presentation, but yeah, so we can answer the question. So, the answer is part of the bid procurement process, in addition to committing to contractor certification and training for the installation, the selected contractor had to provide an on-island facility that would house spare pumps, spare parts, so that they would have parts on island, and they had to have technicians on island that could service the units. And I can, and so we're basically, so there'll be technicians on island that can go out and look at the unit, and they'll be prepared with a spare unit. If they can't diagnose a problem in 15 minutes, then they can pull the pump, put another one in, and take that pump back and work on it, leave you with a new, with a running pump while they diagnose what the problem on the other pump was. So, answer to the question is yes, there are.
Yeah, our goal is.
There will be.
So, yes, there will be.
Yeah.
So they already have some on island.
There are people very.
It's different, so the installation process and the servicing are two different certification processes.
Like literally, is it just the working parts? Is it, what is not covered?
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, Tom. It's the general manufacturer of the product. If the basin fails to do something, if the pump stops and is found to have a bad bearing or a mechanical seal goes, and it stops, we would take it apart. We would be looking at it. We would find, hey, this was a workmanship issue, and we will warranty and repair this pump. Yes. If we're pulling matchbox cars out of it, or a fork, those things are not covered because those things really shouldn't be in the waste stream. So we will work with you, but again,
What about things like latex paint?
well, our unit and basically any grinder pump system, those things should not go in there. There's a list in our home. I don't know if it's in this one, but there's a number of things: the feminine products, the flushable wipes, which are horrible in the industry, and any I can't recall the list right now, but any of those things, they will cause your.
So when you provide these pumps, you're going to provide a list of things that are.
Oh yes.
Yes.
And what about grease, which inevitably goes down the drain? It's impossible to 100% not get grease down
No, I completely agree, and that's another feature of the unit turning over quickly. The level sensor is sealed and won't be affected by grease. The grease will coat the sides and get on some of the components, but it's designed to come in and pump it out, and like I said, cycle it through quickly so we don't have the grease sitting around building up and maybe collecting on a lot of the interior components.
And if grease causes it to fail, is that covered?
I would say if we find that grease is the problem, I would say no, but I don't see how, right now, just thinking, the grease in there could cause any problems. I don't want to say it never could, but the way things are designed is to keep that stuff in train and keep it moving along.
I believe the wording in the contract documents is that the warranty does not cover items that are not commonly found in normal domestic wastewater. Grease should not be in, and other items in wastewater.
Minor amounts of grease, it'll handle minor amounts of grease without any problem. But if you take your turkey, that you just cooked for Thanksgiving, dump it down the toilet, no system can handle that.
Well, and it's not just the toilet that goes into this, it's
Yeah, it's
the laundry,
right.
it's everything, so does laundry detergents affect it? Will they?
No.
No,
Typical.
anything that is typically approved for septic systems, we won't have a problem with.
So I got a question on the cost. What is the retail cost of one of these units?
Well,
A follow-up with the wholesale one.
well, there were a lot of factors that came into the project here with Nantucket. They had some requirements for the getting things here, having the spare parts available. There wasn't just a go to the shelf and buy the unit type of thing. So there were a lot of other costs that we had to meet the requirements of the town and the engineer to meet their request. So I mean,
Ballpark?
uh,
If, let's say I did go to the supply house and got one off the shelf, how much would that cost?
I don't know, $4,000 or $5,000.
Okay.
I
I wanted to see how much of
yeah.
a discount the town's actually
Yeah.
providing us.
Yeah.
It's $1,500.
Yeah, it was.
It's substantial.
I had to ask David
Yep.
what he actually meant when he explained it to me. So yes,
But it also means
In the-
if it fails and you have to replace it, that's a homeowner's cost.
But not that full, that's a full cost for the whole unit, the enclosure and everything.
Yeah,
The
that's the-
replacement would just be the core pump.
And what is that?
I mean it's $1,800, $2,000. Again, that's just kind of off the top of my head.
Can you get back to us with a realistic price then? If that's,
I believe you can get these at on
Excuse me?
Island. Are these available on Island right now at Palmer Supply?
Yes, yes. Hello.
What happens in the winter when it's freezing? Do these things
So what?
You guys are great because
I'm just going to shut this off. We're done.
I made this
Kinda had a
presentation
lot
for
of
no
We're going to
reason.
ask all the
covered.
questions anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Is it in that way?
all right, so, I mean, we were pretty much, I think we covered that last slide, Drew.
Oh, really? Wow. Yeah.
Okay, that's fine, yeah, skip this one, so we're on this one. All right. No, go back. So, yeah, operation and maintenance, there's no scheduled maintenance required. One of the most common things is the cutter on the grinder that goes. They've got a life of approximately 10 years, but, basically, there's nothing that you have to do to take care of the pumps other than, pay attention to the, what you put into the system. And a homeowner guide is provided. We've kind of already alluded to that. There'll be contact information for service repair, instructions for proper use, the do's and don'ts, and then there'll be information on winterization, extended leave measures. And the representatives are here to answer questions, so why don't you talk about the winterization and extended leave?
The winterization process, and again, just to review, the septic goes in, we pump it out. So if you're going to be leaving for an extended period of time, typically fill your bathtub and drain your bathtub. What that will do is that will fill the basin a couple times. It will obviously cause the pump to turn on, and that will get clean water in that line out to the septic system. So that will avoid any of the problems. Nantucket is special. We realized.
We're getting rid of the septic systems.
I'm sorry. Out to the sewer system out to the street. Nantucket is special in that there is a seasonal. A lot of seasonal residents, and this was one of the things when we came and did the hydraulic design that we had to do. The other thing that is an option, not a bad idea, is if you're going to leave for, several months, is some non-toxic antifreeze, RV marine antifreeze. That will it will keep the basin from freezing, but the main idea is the polypropylene glycol will displace the water, and because in the cutters there's some close tolerances, if those sit for an extended period of time, they can kind of gum up or kind of get a little sticky, so that antifreeze will displace that water and help avoid that problem. And then when you come back and you start using your water again, the tank fills up, the pump turns on, and that non-toxic antifreeze, it makes its way to David's, and not to get too inside baseball, the bacteria at the plant loves it. So
you put that just inside the big basin hole?
you just dump it down your drain, or just dump it down your toilet. That's a good, because again, it all ends up there, and
But it won't keep going out again though, and just empty out, right? It won't stop at your thing there?
well, the bathtub full of water, yes, we'll cycle that pump through, and then say you do that, and then you dump 5-gallon jugs down there. That will mix with the water. It doesn't have to be all straight antifreeze, but as long as that's in there, that's going to help lubricate and keep things from sticking. And then when you come back, whether it's a summer home or something like that, or you come in, you turn on the water, you flush the toilet, and we're back off and running. One of the things we are going to work with the local people is the seasonal people. If they did want us to, winterize it, they would, that's a service we can provide, like you winterize the sprinkler system or the any of the other systems in the house, the pool, things like that. So it can be added to the checklist, or it can be, something that, you might want to take care of yourself. Again, some of the year-round people, it won't come into play, but, on the mainland in Waltham and Walpole, people aren't leaving for months at a time. They're in it, so the grinder pumps are used and working here. It's special, and we had to kind of consider that. So we think we did with what we're prepared to help with.
What does this look like when it's in the ground, under the ground?
There's a couple in these pictures, if you can see them.
I know and that's the point. It's hard to see.
Yeah.
Yes, but
So-
so the one on the right is a close-up.
Yeah.
So that rock in there is the same rock that you see in the back of the room.
Yeah, and that's in the back. That's
And this is the same house, so that's it. Just if you're in the driveway looking at it, so that's it right there.
And then the control panel, I don't think we have one in these, maybe that's
Pictures?
one there, yeah, but again, it's not a big box, and in theory, you really should just kind of continue enjoying your life here on Nantucket, and these things will perform, hopefully for a good long time.
Yes.
So when the pump shuts off, there's about 10 gallons left in the bottom of the basin, is that what you're
Yep, that's,
saying? Do you recommend that gets pumped out at all? I mean, does
No, it's basically,
solids build up down there and sit?
No, you don't have to do any maintenance at all. No maintenance at all. It's designed, that 10 gallons is supposed to be in there.
yeah. The bottom's sloped, it helps get the solids to the bottom there, and basically, we wouldn't want to, when the pump turns on in that initial suction, we want some liquid there, so that can get into the pump. If we pumped it too low, we could entrain some air, and again, there's some hydraulics and some other stuff going on.
Even though the solids do migrate to the bottom, when it turns on, it's sort of,
They're at the bottom of the basin, right under the pump, so the next time that starts, those are the first to go.
it all gets mixed up.
Yes.
Sounds good.
Can these units dry out and not use?
I guess in theory, yes. If, you were left the house and weren't there and the 10 gallons of water in the basin evaporated through the vent, I don't know how long that would take. Yeah. Well, an expert in a grinder pump that hopefully people are using, annually or something like that. So, for that 10 gallons to evaporate. Yes, if nobody, yeah, so.
Yeah, that could even happen.
Hello.
I appreciate that you, first of all, thank you for putting this on tonight. I appreciate all of your time and effort and energy. I see that you brought some samples, you got the alarm, you also got that rock. Come on, you guys, that doesn't look like a Nantucket rock.
I know, it doesn't look like, we're importing rocks.
Do the rocks have to be approved?
The rocks are already approved.
So are there choices besides that one?
Unfortunately, no. Yeah, if somebody wants to start a custom rock business, I'm all in, I can help, but, we'll just start with the standard, I guess.
The town discount does not apply, though, if you go with a different rock. Yes.
Are there levels that this cannot go underground? I mean, depending on the outlet from the house to the reservoir, you must have some different choices, because this has to come to the surface of the ground, the top of the tank. So what are the restrictions that way?
Yeah, it's designed so that it's flexible and you can put it at the depth that's required. When the contractor comes to your site, he'll ask you where you want the unit, and then based on your outflow from your house, he'll determine if it can be installed. But it's designed to be adjustable,
There's
field adjustable.
flexibility. Go ahead.
Basically, this is the business end. This is the basin, this is where the pump is, this is where your line comes in from the house. Obviously, this is your electrical, and there's the wonderful rock up there. This piece is much shorter, this is for display, and so it's easier to transport. But this part is typically taller than me and sits on top of the basin. So this is how deep things can be. This is a flexible discharge, because we're disturbing the ground, then we're putting this in, and then, hopefully everything should be installed properly, and you will get some things will tip and twist, and this keeps, things, has that flexibility to work with that. So this is but obviously this will be longer, and you'll only, ideally see the rock at the top.
So that's adjustable to grade. I mean, that piece is custom for their unit. So that piece will be different
Much longer.
for everybody, depending on how deep your
Yeah.
unit needs to be.
Exactly, and then based on where things come out, where you need to go for your discharge to get to the street, then they'll say, okay, we need this much, they can cut it off, and that's where the whole assembly with the rock goes on, and there you go.
And the flow capacity, is there a limit on how much flow can go into it? I mean, of course, that's an expansion above level.
Yeah.
But how much can it keep up to, gallons per minute roughly?
It's designed to do about 28 gallons a minute. So you would have to have a lot of stuff turned on to override the pump.
Is that unit inside a container, like a box, a concrete box, or is that buried directly in the ground?
That's designed to be directly buried into the ground.
You're gonna be able to smell?
No.
Again, we're back to, it comes in and goes out, it comes in and goes out. The septic tank, things are designed to, we call it cooking. The biological process takes over, and that's where the odors come from. This is designed to avoid that by getting it in and getting it out, getting it in and getting it out.
So our grind 'em up guys have a boat to catch. Figure that.
Yeah.
So maybe one more question for them, if there are any. Otherwise, they'll make good their escape.
They left a bunch of brochures out back.
And we'll be here to, we can stick around and answer additional
There's
questions.
some brochures at the
Out back. Any questions, get them to David, and he can get them to us, and I'm usually on the island once a month.
We'll be over in the island more.
Yes, more frequently now. Thank you all for coming.
Thanks, guys.